Picture this moment. Your phone lights up with her message, maybe a photo or playful emoji that makes your pulse quicken, but something whispers beneath the surface that you're not alone in receiving this. Welcome back, everyone, to Psych Seeker. Before we begin this journey, go ahead and hit subscribe, then tap that like button. Understanding her inner world starts here. What I'm revealing today will transform how you interpret women's behavior forever. Let me paint a scenario for you. She sends something your way. Could be an image, a flirty text, perhaps a story that makes your heartbeat accelerate. Yet, beneath your excitement lives a quiet tension, a small voice questioning whether this moment belongs only to you. Most guys never pause to examine it. Most assume they've received something exclusive. But here's the reality nobody explained to you. She's broadcasting similar signals to every man within her reach, and recognizing this pattern will save you from emotional quicksand. I understand that feeling intimately. You've experienced it, staring at your screen, examining each word choice, each punctuation mark, mentally replaying that picture or conversation repeatedly. You're wishing, hoping, convincing yourself this means something unique. But friend, that hope becomes the exact fuel she's relying upon. Women possess an instinct for gathering attention, and what registers to you as intimacy registers to her as confirmation of worth. That's her motivation for sending these signals your direction, not through deliberate cruelty, but because she hungers for the attention rush, the confidence boost, the subtle influence that emerges when men pursue her emotional breadcrumbs. You might be thinking, she wouldn't do that to me specifically. That assumption is the trap most men construct for themselves. The truth reveals she's exploring possibilities, not exclusively with you, but with every guy willing to engage, to respond, to commit emotionally without guarantee. And here's the real danger zone. When you respond like typical men do, pursuing, dissecting, obsessing, you're delivering precisely what she desires. You're participating in her framework, completely blind to the actual mechanics. This destroys most men's confidence. They permit their pride and longing to obscure the boundary between authentic bonding and attention-seeking behavior. You feel chosen, valued, significant. But reality shows she's transmitting identical patterns to dozens, perhaps hundreds of men through various subtle channels. And here's what matters most. The instant you grasp this concept, the instant you recognize her behavioral fingerprint, your entire lens transforms. You quit responding from emotion and begin observing from logic. You quit pursuing and begin assessing value. Before this video concludes, you'll discover the 5 psychological reasons she broadcasts these signals to multiple men. Even more crucially, you'll master protecting yourself from emotional snares she doesn't consciously realize she's constructing. This isn't mere guidance. It's the uncomfortable truth most men actively avoid, yet desperately require for growth. Let's cut through the illusions. Most guys have zero awareness of the dynamic they're entering. You see, whenever she shares a personal story, an attractive photo, or even a passing thought with you, it registers as intimate. It registers like she's granting you access to her private universe, like she's handing you a key nobody else possesses. But here's what's actually happening. That key isn't exclusively yours. It's one element of a broader system, one she's frequently unaware she's operating. She's distributing the same content, deploying identical emotional triggers across multiple men simultaneously. And every reaction nourishes her perception of control, her perception of significance. Men stumble into this trap because our neurology craves connection. We hunger for exclusivity. We hunger for validation. We hunger for the belief that we occupy a special position in someone's existence. And when she offers the smallest indication, a tiny fragment of focus, it activates your reward system like lightning. Dopamine floods your brain. Your chest constricts. Suddenly, you're emotionally invested. And before conscious awareness kicks in, you're competing in a contest where the guidelines stay hidden and the reward is frequently a mirage. Here's what most men completely miss. She doesn't require you to chase her momentum. She doesn't require you to analyze every syllable, every icon, every silence between messages. What she genuinely feeds upon is the emotional energy you channel toward her signals. She calibrates her value not by what she offers you, but by the intensity of your response patterns. This is why perceiving her system matters tremendously. Once you see the pattern, the power balance shifts entirely. You quit being the marionette and transform into the analyst. You quit wondering whether she finds you attractive and start questioning why she requires your reaction fundamentally. And yes, it generates discomfort. That unease you're experiencing, the knot in your gut, the irritation, is precisely what she manufactures without conscious intention. It's delicate, psychological, nearly undetectable to the untrained eye. But men who comprehend this framework, men who identify this cycle, they quit investing blindly into uncertainty. They quit permitting wishful thinking to dictate their choices. They begin making judgments based on clarity and tactical awareness, not emotional reflexes. By acknowledging that she distributes identical content across multiple men, you're not adopting cynicism. You're adopting awareness. You're reclaiming your time investment, your emotional bandwidth, and your self-regard. And that's precisely why this knowledge threatens the unconscious game she's been running. It extracts you from the net she's woven and positions you in command of your own emotional reactions. Once you genuinely internalize this principle, the manner you engage with women, the manner you perceive attention dynamics, and the manner you defend your emotional perimeters will permanently change. And trust my experience, when you absorb the 5 hidden psychological drivers behind this conduct, everything you assumed you understood about attraction will be challenged, interrogated, and reconstructed. Now let's go deeper still, because this is the exact point where most men lose their balance without recognizing the shift. You see, every instance she displays something to you, whether it's a photograph, a personal anecdote, or a clever joke, it's never accidental. It's a signal broadcast, a psychological test, and a window into her internal mechanisms. She's not operating with conscious malice, but her behaviors generate consequences. And if you don't comprehend the motivations powering them, you'll continue falling into identical emotional traps repeatedly, draining your energy, your concentration, and your self-worth. The first reason she does this centers on attention itself. Men drastically underestimate the psychological magnetism of attention for women. Every like notification, every comment, every private reply triggers validation chemistry within her brain. You might interpret her sharing as romantic interest directed at you, but in actual fact, she's feeding her need to feel observed, wanted, or admired by an audience. And the unsettling element? She's displaying this identical content to multiple men at the same time. That doesn't mean she doesn't appreciate your specific attention. It means your attention represents one stream among many rivers feeding the same reservoir of ego. The second reason involves emotional testing protocols. Humans are neurologically programmed to detect and respond to subtle social cues. Women, frequently without conscious planning, test how men respond to specific content types. She monitors your reactions closely. Do you display jealousy, protectiveness, confusion, or eagerness to satisfy her? Each response pattern reveals information about your character, your emotional vulnerabilities, and even your hidden insecurities. You feel the tension in your chest, but she often lacks awareness that she's conducting an evaluation. Third, she's constructing optionality architecture. Showing herself to multiple men isn't about inflicting pain on anyone specifically. It's about maintaining multiple doors in an open state. She wants to measure where her attention generates impact, who responds most intensely, who demonstrates the highest perceived value. Your heart races because you're participating in her option pool, and that very reality grants her a subtle psychological edge over your emotions. You might label it manipulation, but in reality, it's human behavioral economics, and comprehending it grants you control mechanisms. Fourth, she weaponizes curiosity dynamics. The human brain abhors uncertainty and ambiguity. Every image posted, message transmitted, or story shared generates questions spiraling through your consciousness. Does she find me attractive? Who else is viewing this content? Do I hold special status? That uncertainty maintains your attention locked firmly on her presence, even while she's broadcasting identical signals to her entire network. Finally, she communicates through nonverbal channels exclusively. Beyond explicit words and visual images, there exist signals that tap directly into your psychological wiring. Post-timing strategies, subtle tonal shifts, body language embedded in photographs. Men frequently overlook these layers, reacting emotionally instead of observing logically and strategically. Understanding these hidden communication channels allows you to perceive the truth clearly. She's not offering herself to you exclusively. She's offering a fragment of her influence intentionally or unconsciously to measure, test, and observe male response patterns. Once you recognize these behavioral patterns clearly, you naturally begin to step backward emotionally. You quit overanalyzing every interaction, quit overinvesting in uncertain outcomes, and begin to protect your emotional resources intelligently. You see the game mechanics, and suddenly, you're no longer the piece being moved. You're the strategist observing the board. Here's where most men experience catastrophic failure without recognizing the crash happening. They confuse attention signals with affection substance. You've experienced this before. The flutter sensation when she sends something unexpected. The excitement surge when she shares a story or photo deliberately. Your mind immediately begins racing, constructing scenarios, hoping for genuine connection to materialize. But attention is fundamentally not affection in disguise. Affection demands consistency, vulnerability, and active prioritization of your presence. Attention can be temporary, surface level, and distributed freely to anyone who triggers a reactive response from her. Understanding this critical distinction is essential if you want to navigate her psychology without losing your center. She knows, consciously or unconsciously, the influence she wields when men confuse attention for something deeper and more meaningful. Every message you transmit, every reaction you display, reinforces that influence structure. And the moment you begin chasing her validation, you're trapped in the system. Most men believe they're participating in a romantic progression, but really, they're feeding energy into a game they don't fully comprehend the rules of. And while she might not even intend to manipulate outcomes, the result remains identical. Emotional dependency develops, distraction intensifies, and subtle loss of self-governance occurs. The second hidden reason she shares these things is projection mechanics. By showing you herself, her thoughts, her photos, her stories, she projects an identity she wants men to respond to favorably. But the projected image rarely reflects the complete reality of who she is. What she wants isn't always love or authentic connection with you. Often it's confirmation that she is desired, admired, or envied by others. She's broadcasting fragments of herself to measure reactions, to understand her own social power, and sometimes simply to enjoy the attention she receives without commitment. Third is emotional leverage architecture. Men underestimate dramatically how much a woman can affect their mental state with small, calculated, or even accidental signal transmissions. A smile captured in a photo, a teasing message, a story shared late at night when defenses are low. They are all psychological triggers designed to create response. You feel drawn inward, compelled to respond immediately, and that emotional pull is precisely why she shares it in the first place. Even if the process is unconscious, she's influencing your behavior patterns, your thought processes, your emotional states, without ever directly asking for permission. Fourth, she's creating comparison frameworks automatically. Every man she interacts with represents a measurement unit against others in her network. By showing the same content to multiple men simultaneously, she observes who reacts with greatest intensity, who gives freely without boundaries, who invests emotionally without reciprocation guarantees, and who maintains self-control. This is subtle, almost invisible to the participants. But when you understand the framework, you see the game mechanics clearly. You begin to measure your own reactions against clarity standards, not desire impulses. Finally, she's testing boundary structures continuously. Every shared image, story, or thought probes the limits of what you'll tolerate. How much will you emotionally care about her? How intensely will you chase her validation? And how far will you permit yourself to fall for something that might lack exclusivity entirely? Recognizing this dynamic allows you to maintain self-respect, avoid manipulation, and step into emotional control territory. Once you master this awareness, you see beyond surface attraction mechanics. You see influence operations, attention economies, and the unspoken rules governing her interactions with men systematically. Now, let's uncover the final, most subtle reasons she shares these things with multiple men simultaneously, and why understanding them changes everything about your approach. The fifth reason is validation addiction. She thrives on it, often without even recognizing the pattern consciously. Every reaction received, every message exchanged, every bit of attention she captures confirms her desirability to herself. It's not about you as an individual person. It's about how you make her feel about her own identity and worth. Men mistake this dynamic for romantic interest or love potential, but it's a psychological feedback loop operating automatically. When you realize this truth, you quit being a pawn in a game you didn't even know had started. Validation drives behavior because it triggers emotional reward chemicals in her brain automatically. Just like you feel pleasure when a woman notices you exist, she feels identical sensations when men respond to her signals. And here's the mechanism. She multiplies these signals across multiple men in her network. Your emotional energy is the fuel powering her sense of self-worth, and most men pour it inward without pause or consideration. But when you step back emotionally and observe rather than react instinctively, you reclaim control over your emotional resources. You no longer feed the unconscious cycle she's operating within. The sixth and final reason is power dynamics architecture. This is subtle, almost invisible to those participating. By sharing herself, her image, her thoughts, her attention, she holds a quiet influence over men's emotional states. That influence isn't always intentional or malicious, but it exists as a reality. Each reaction you have, each interpretation you construct, strengthens her position in the dynamic. The key for you is to recognize it before it controls your behavior patterns completely. Emotional awareness isn't just self-protection strategy, it's mastery. It allows you to interact without becoming vulnerable to manipulation or false hope construction. When you understand these 6 hidden reasons, something powerful happens within you. You stop confusing attention with intimacy substance. You stop assigning value to signals that are not exclusive to you. You learn to observe, evaluate, and respond from a place of strategy and self-respect rather than desire and wishful hope. That's the real power here, emotional clarity. Most men never reach this level because they continue reacting, not observing the patterns. They continue giving away energy to a system they don't fully see operating. This knowledge doesn't make you cynical about women. It makes you aware of reality. It equips you to protect your mind and emotions, to stop chasing illusions, and to finally understand female psychology on a deeper level than most ever will. Once you grasp this framework, you see her behaviors for what they truly are. Signals shaped by attention hunger, curiosity exploitation, testing protocols, projection needs, comparison frameworks, validation addiction, and subtle power dynamics. And with that insight, you step into a space where you're no longer manipulated by uncertainty, no longer anxious about her intentions, and no longer blinded by hope without evidence. You start making decisions consciously instead of reacting unconsciously to stimuli. And that, my friend, is where true emotional strength begins its foundation. Here's the truth most men will never face directly. Once you understand why she shows the same things to multiple men, everything changes in your interactions. You no longer live in hope or assumption patterns. You operate from clarity and strategic awareness. The final step isn't about punishing her, judging her character, or becoming cynical about women generally. It's about taking back control of your mind, your emotions, and your energy allocation. Most men never get here because they confuse desire with understanding reality. They keep reacting to signals automatically, replaying scenarios in their heads endlessly, hoping for exclusivity that doesn't exist in practice. But you, if you've followed this insight carefully, you see the patterns now, and patterns allow mastery to develop. Now, mastery begins with observation practice. Stop responding emotionally to every post, message, or story she shares publicly. Step back and watch the dynamics. Notice the repetition patterns. Notice the timing strategies. Notice what triggers you emotionally. Every emotional spike is a data point worth examining. It's a signal telling you how invested you've become, how much you're giving away, and how much power she holds over your emotional state currently. Observation doesn't mean indifference or coldness. It means self-preservation. It means choosing clarity over chaos in your emotional life. Next, establish boundaries firmly. Once you see the pattern operating, you define your engagement rules. You decide what deserves your attention, your energy, and your emotional investment moving forward. You no longer give freely to signals designed to manipulate or test you without consent. Boundaries aren't walls blocking connection. They're filters that protect your mental and emotional resources, letting you respond on your terms rather than hers exclusively. When men understand this principle, they stop chasing illusions and start cultivating real connection with women who are truly aligned with them authentically. Then comes detachment practice. Detachment doesn't mean coldness or withdrawal from all interaction. It means emotional neutrality maintenance. You don't let uncertainty or attention dynamics control your thoughts or actions anymore. You recognize signals for what they are, assess their meaning objectively, and act consciously from choice. Detachment frees you from anxiety, frustration, and obsession cycles completely. It allows you to respond with intelligence rather than reaction impulses. Finally, channel your energy into self-mastery development. Women are attracted to men who are grounded, confident, and emotionally independent from their validation. When you reclaim your attention, focus on growth, purpose, and strength building, you become the man who is no longer influenced by patterns designed to create desire without commitment promises. You shift from being a player in someone else's game to being the architect of your own life direction. Remember this principle clearly. Understanding her psychology doesn't make you cynical about relationships. It makes you powerful in your choices. You stop being the reaction and start being the observer, the strategist, the man who decides what he will invest in and what he will walk away from deliberately. Once you internalize these 6 hidden truths completely, you no longer fall into traps of hope, jealousy, or overanalysis patterns. You act with clarity, confidence, and control over your destiny. This is the power every man craves, but few ever achieve in practice. And now you have the roadmap to get there. Your attention, your energy, your emotions, they belong to you exclusively. If you found this valuable, hit that like button for Psych Seeker and drop a comment sharing your biggest takeaway. Protect your resources, master your responses, and watch how your interactions and your entire life transform from this point forward.